Every 4 years, Chinese football fans ask the exact same question: where's Team China in soccer? And when the World Cup arrives, the Chinese companies are everywhere, Chinese advertisements surround the pitch, Chinese brands sponsor the tournaments, and Chinese-made products fill stadiums. Well, look, there's even a Chinese referee team. So great. And this year, you might see Lenovo, Mengniu Milk, Hisense, but no actual Chinese team made it. There's only one thing that really matters to the fans during the World Cup: the matches between the teams. And China doesn't have a good team to go there. Now, what makes this especially embarrassing to me is the fact that FIFA this year expanded the World Cup from 32 teams to 48 teams, and Asia went from 4 qualifying slots to 8, practically doubling it. And the most forgiving qualification window in World Cup history, China didn't make it. They finished below Oman, they finished below Indonesia, below Palestine. They didn't even reach the final round. They limped out of qualifying. The last time China appeared was 2002. First time, and probably going to be the only time, lost all 3 group stage games, scored 0 goals, and conceded 9. They went home with nothing. Hao Haidong, who is China's top footballer at the time, later revealed that CCP chairman Jiang Zemin personally ordered the team to reflect on their failure. Even their Serbian manager at the time, Bora Milutinovic, went from a celebrated foreign coach to being a criminal overnight.
反思第一次中国队进世界杯，就因为输给巴西、输给土耳其、输给哥斯达黎加，就要我们反思，就米卢也要反思，对吧？就是说，在中共的体制里面，没有任何对行业的尊重，只有长官意志，对吧？
Now, Hao Haidong calls this that the ideas of the leadership's thoughts over everything. No real reflection is being done, and everybody kind of moves on from year to year. But fast forward to 2026, Chinese propaganda is now so desperate that they're celebrating Ronaldo getting cupping on his neck.
神秘的东方力量再现世界杯。眼尖的观众发现，克罗地亚37岁老将佩里西奇后衣领处隐约露出暗红色圆形印记，正是拔火罐留下的痕迹。克罗地亚球员大腿和后背上就曾出现一排排拔罐留下的红圈。拔火罐已风靡全球体坛，内马尔、C 罗、本泽马等球星也曾被拍到身上留有火罐印记。
Because cupping is a Chinese medicine technique. That's a Chinese victory. Lenovo powering the broadcast is a victory. Chinese people have this meme. It's a saying: how does a country with 1.4 billion people fail to find 11 men to play soccer? I don't know either. Now, here's some logical guesses. Some say that China needs more investment into soccer. They say that China should host the World Cup once, give the home team a psychological advantage. They blame foreign coaches for maybe not caring enough. They blame individual players for not playing well. But actually, Xi Jinping already claimed to love football. He actually met with FIFA president Gianni Infantino, and then in 2015, he launched a 50-point national football reform plan that essentially opened the floodgates for investments both in China's domestic league and in the acquisition of European leagues. By 2017, managers from Arsenal and Chelsea were publicly worried about China's financial pulling power. Back in 2011, Xi Jinping even told a South Korean politician that he had 3 wishes: to qualify for the World Cup, to host it, and to win it. He's poured millions into the program. 11 years later, the record is unchanged. So money isn't the problem. Ambition is also not the problem. They've got plenty of that. State action isn't even the problem. China doesn't have a football talent problem. China has a football system problem, and that system was broken from the inside out. Now, to understand how, you really have to go back to Jiang Zemin. China's so-called golden age of football on paper was the late 90s to the early 2000s, same around the time that the economy was exploding. So the sport had momentum. This was the window when Chinese football could build something real. Instead, Jiang Zemin, who rose through the CCP ranks not on ability but on political maneuvering, normalized a simple governing philosophy: make money, quietly make big money. That was the saying at the time. So it was about loyalty over competence, about corruption and connection over results, and that philosophy infected every ministry, every industry, every institution that the CCP touched, and believe me, they love to touch the football industry. So it absolutely gutted football. Corruption didn't just sit at the top, it worked through every level, down to the basic team managers, the coaching staff, the people that were running the games, the refs. the basic function of the sport was destroyed. Now let's talk about player selection. Think about what that means. To become a Chinese national footballer, having talent wasn't enough. You had to know the right people, pay the right officials, navigate sports politics, because people deciding who made the team, they weren't purely evaluating skills. They were also trying to extract some sort of a compensation in the process. So the players who got selected weren't necessarily the best players. Obviously, they had the star players who had to be there, but a lot of times politics fit the picture, right? Whoever could present the one that was really in line with the narratives that the CCP wanted to put out. So you can't really build a world-class or a World Cup team on that foundation. You started off on the wrong foot. You can't even build a decent club-level team on that foundation. Former national team coach Li Tie was sentenced after admitting to extensive bribery. Former Chinese Football Association president Chen Shuyuan, life sentence for corruption. Dozens of football officials, executives, and insiders, they were all punished in the same sweep. So it's not just part of the history, because now things are getting so bad. Half of the clubs in China's Super League started this season on negative points, punishments linked to match fixing, gambling, and corruption. One club in Tianjin was still below zero after 10 games into the season. And so these aren't just like random people doing it, it's the whole system that's bad. The refs, like I mentioned, are bribed, club executives are manipulating matches. So the entire thing is kind of like a transaction. And this is really the thing, you hear this about, maybe even like gamers in China too. They either have to spend a lot of money to become the best, or they cheat and they use hacking software. So the whole competitive structure or the mindset behind it is different, in a bad way, obviously. So what's supposed to serve as talent, reward merit, and build a team was essentially hollowed out in favor of politics and money. And when the results don't really matter, considering that the players are told to reflect every single time, and who's doing the, overseeing the reflection, right? The people who are corrupt. So it's like they don't want change either. Good players get washed out. Maybe they try to go compete in European leagues, but again, they never have another part of this, again, is the training structure too, but also that's something we'll talk about next, right? So China's been running that mechanism for decades. Now about the athletes themselves, because this is where it gets kind of brutal. In China, when an athlete wins, they become a propaganda token. They become a symbol of national greatness, but when they lose, they're worth less than a piece of plastic. Look at diver Chen Hongchan, China's Olympic gold medalist for 2 Olympics, right? She was being torn apart in a private group chat, which included sports journalists and coaches and teammates of hers. These were the people that were supposed to support her, and the country was supposed to have a system that helps these Olympic gold medalists, but that environment doesn't really produce great athletes. It just produces a lot of jealousy. And it actually produces people who are survivalists who can learn very quickly to not stand out in the wrong way that could end careers. So when you imagine a situation where you have star football players, the coaches are jealous of them, or other players are jealous, they use different tricks to try to get that person to mess up or make the wrong decision, those kind of things, right? It's not about expressing your skills. Now, another point is how the school education system works in China. Kids are under tremendous pressure, starting in elementary school to high school, to succeed on test scores, that they're up 7 a.m. till 4 p.m. or 3 p.m. in schools, and then after dinner, a mandatory night school, or it's called self-study sessions, which most schools actually mandate anyways, instead of an after-school sports program. LeBron James probably wouldn't survive in the Chinese sports system. Lionel Messi and Ronaldo would probably be busy prepping for the Gaokao, which is the college exam in China. And even if they made the team, look, currently Messi doesn't need to study the Javier Milei doctrine in a weekly meeting. Mbappe and Dembélé, they probably don't have to worry about the century of humiliation and fight for the honor of France. Haaland can probably just Viking meme all day. Chinese players have to carry the thoughts of Xi Jinping onto the pitch and attend weekly party study sessions on Xi's vision of a strong sports nation. I don't know, something like that. So my point is that they don't carry a lot of this political baggage in their head when they play. And that's what essentially is a way to describe how athletes are in China. They're just a piece of the propaganda. Now, when the CCP's whole governing instinct collides with football and the results, what you get is essentially an attempt at mass producing things, right? China's good at mass producing, cheap toys, electric cars, infrastructure, metal pipes. But it also works with the Olympic medals too, because you have these individual disciplines where you could kind of train for results through repetition and just many of the trainees who don't make it, but you have a pipeline to get the best out of them, right? But so what I'm trying to say is that the instinct for the CCP is to standardize it, supervise, and to scale in the ways that they hope how players can be born in football. But that's not the sport for them to do that, because successful football culture, it's street level, it's local, it's organic. It depends on kids who play from a young age, who watch the games, who have the ability to get community clubs, local level clubs, school clubs, which they then have scouts who come and get them to play all over Europe, and then onto the national team level. Football flourishes precisely where authorities loosen its grips, which is down to the local level, and it's in the kind of communities that the CCP don't really tolerate. You can mass produce electric cars, but you really cannot do it with footballers. Now, compare that to neighboring countries like Japan and Korea. Both East Asian cultures, heavy emphasis on education over sports, both technically should face, by the cultural logic that people would excuse China, that same structural disadvantage, right? Instead, Japan and South Korea consistently qualify for the World Cups. Japan in particular has great results for the region. Their players compete in top European leagues. They're backed by countries that actually appreciates them, not just for propaganda instruments, but as athletes. And their kids have access to after-school resources that develop them beyond the classrooms, whether that's in soccer or in other sports. And resources in most Chinese schools are simply not there, unless you go to like one of the elite ones, right? But that's not where the seeds of athleticism begin in elite society. It begins at the ground level. So the difference isn't cultural, it's not geographic, it's systemic. Japan and Korea, they built these systems that reward merit. And China just built a football system that rewards, I don't know, corruption. What happens to Xi Jinping's 3 wishes? Well, qualifying is probably going to be another 4 years. It's a story that you'll forget. And assuming anything changes, and nothing suggests it's changing, winning can just be safely ejected into orbit because, well, if you can't even qualify, which again leaves the last bit, which is hosting, right? Now, the FIFA president flew to China in 2017, met with Xi Jinping personally. Back then, people were speculating that probably China will eventually host something in 2030 or 2034, which both of these tournaments have been awarded to different countries, one in southern Europe and then one in Saudi Arabia. So the earliest China could practically host something will be like, I don't know, the 2040s. Xi Jinping will be 89 years old. He's already not interested in soccer as much as he was back 10 years ago. And so it seems like they've fallen out of the priorities of the CCP now. And to the point where, like, again, this is not to discount or to even conclude that Chinese people don't like soccer anymore, because it's still the most popular sport in the world and probably the most popular sport in China. There was an incident where they didn't even buy the rights to broadcast FIFA games for like in May of this year before the World Cup, and then eventually it got settled down to around $60 million, which is actually 1/5 of what they originally sought to get it for. And yeah, it seems like it's just not a strategic thing anymore. But the point is, Chinese fans still love football. When Messi came to China, played Australia in 2023, the tickets were sold for a sky-high price. So the idea of football not being something that's loved in China is just gone. It's just not true. It's still there. It's just that on a political level, it's gone away, right? And the issue precisely is that once something they stop caring or controlling, then it kind of loses all of the attention, the funding, and everything else, and it just kind of goes into the corner and withers away and dies off on its own. And that's kind of sad. But I guess, the passion is real. It never went away, but the system just doesn't deserve it right now. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you gained some understanding as to how China never qualifies in FIFA World Cup. But also, if you have other ideas or reasons as to why, please let me know in the comments and we can discuss. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.